What if I told you that being kind to everyone is not only unwise, but dangerous? That the very thing we've been taught to admire, to practice without question, might be the quiet reason truth is fading, boundaries are vanishing, and wrong is being praised as right. We live in a world where kindness is treated as the highest virtue, but few stop to ask, at what cost? The confusion between kindness and goodness is one of the most subtle and dangerous moral errors in modern thought. Kindness, in its common understanding, is the quality of being pleasant, agreeable, and considerate. It is a social virtue, often associated with politeness, warmth, and non-confrontation. Goodness, however, is something far deeper, far more demanding, and, at times, far more uncomfortable. It involves truth, justice, integrity, and sacrifice. And though kindness may be a tool of goodness, it is not goodness itself. To put it plainly, not all that is kind is good, and not all that is good will feel kind. Imagine a man standing at the edge of a cliff, blindfolded, believing he is in a garden. You know that one more step will plunge him into death. Now, if kindness were your only guide, you might hesitate to shout. You wouldn't want to scare him or ruin his illusion or seem impolite. But if goodness moved you, you would yell, tackle him if you must, rip off the blindfold and endure his anger or confusion, because his life is more important than his momentary comfort. This is the tragedy of confusing kindness with goodness. In elevating kindness as the highest virtue, we often paralyze ourselves in moments that require action. We bite our tongues in the presence of cruelty. We allow lies to spread because correcting them would be unkind. We flatter people's choices instead of challenging them because it is easier, safer, and socially rewarded. In doing so, we become complicit, not in active evil, but in passive failure. We trade righteousness for pleasantness. Goodness is not a slave to emotions or appearances. It acts in the interest of what is right, even when it wounds, even when it alienates. A good parent disciplines their child, not because it feels good, but because it is right. A good friend tells you you're wrong when you are. A good leader makes unpopular decisions if they serve a greater truth. These people may not always seem kind, but their love is real, and their goodness runs deeper than their tone. What often passes for kindness today is actually conflict avoidance. We are kind because we do not want to deal with the discomfort of disagreement. We are kind because we fear being disliked. We are kind because we want to appear virtuous, without bearing any of the cost that real virtue demands. This form of kindness is counterfeit. It looks golden, but it is soft, hollow, and powerless against real darkness. There are moments when kindness and goodness align beautifully. A gentle word to the weary, a compassionate act to the suffering, a small mercy offered to someone who's trying. In these cases, kindness is not the problem. It is the perfect expression of goodness. But in moments of moral crisis, kindness alone is not enough. In fact, it may be the very thing that stops us from being good. When we refuse to challenge someone's destructive behavior, when we applaud what is harmful, when we tolerate the intolerable, all in the name of being kind, we are not practicing love. We are practicing surrender. And while it may feel righteous in the moment, it is ultimately a betrayal, not just of truth, but of the person we're pretending to care for. The hard truth is that being good sometimes means not being liked. It means saying things that make others uncomfortable. It means confronting, correcting, and sometimes even walking away. That is the burden of goodness. It is not always gentle, but it is always just. It does not flatter, but it never lies. And while kindness may offer temporary ease, goodness offers the chance at something eternal, real healing, real change, and real love. When kindness is extended to everyone, equally and indiscriminately, it begins to lose its moral clarity. What starts as a seemingly noble act, treating all people with the same level of warmth and acceptance, slowly becomes a fog that obscures the lines between right and wrong, noble and base, virtuous and corrupt. In an age that fears judgment and elevates tolerance above all else, the demand to be universally kind can weaken the very foundation upon which moral discernment rests. To be kind to everyone, regardless of their actions or intentions, is to pretend that all behaviors deserve the same emotional response. But they do not. A thief and a teacher should not receive the same measure of affirmation. A liar and a truth-teller do not merit the same trust. And yet, when kindness is handed out like candy, freely, thoughtlessly, and without regard to character, it sends a subtle message that all things are morally equal. It tells the righteous and the wicked alike, you are both acceptable. There is no difference between you that requires my judgment. This is not virtue. It is moral blindness dressed in courtesy. There is a time and place for compassion, and there are people whose brokenness cries out for understanding. But there is also a time for righteous anger, for correction, and for refusal. The failure to distinguish these moments is not only unwise, it is dangerous. When we are kind to those who harm others, or who persist in wrongdoing without remorse, we begin to normalize their behavior. We offer them our silence, our smiles, our social approval, and in doing so, we validate what should be condemned. We trade moral clarity for social ease. Consider a society where everyone is treated with the same kindness, regardless of what they do. In such a place, what incentive is there to grow, to repent, to strive towards something higher? If cruelty and compassion are both met with warmth, then virtue becomes irrelevant. Kindness in this sense becomes a kind of currency that inflates until it is worthless. It buys nothing, proves nothing, changes nothing. The pursuit of moral clarity demands that we respond differently to different kinds of people. This does not mean being harsh or cruel. It means being honest. It means reserving praise for what is praiseworthy and withholding approval from what is harmful. It means that sometimes the kindest thing one can do is refuse to offer kindness. It is not unloving to say, "You are wrong." It is not hatred to say, "I cannot support you in this." On the contrary, such moments can be acts of moral courage, deeply loving in their refusal to play along with what is false. There is also a great lie that suggests kindness can fix everything, that if we are simply nice enough, long enough, people will change. But evil is not always softened by warmth. Some people exploit it. Some use your kindness as a shield for their behavior, a mask to hide behind, a way to avoid consequences. Offering such people the same warmth you would offer a repentant soul is not kindness, it is complicity. What we need is not endless kindness, but the ability to see clearly, the kind of clarity that can distinguish between the one who is struggling to do right and the one who has abandoned the idea of right altogether. The kind of clarity that recognizes the danger in smiling at what ought to grieve us. Moral clarity does not ask us to hate, but it does ask us to discern. It asks us to resist the temptation to treat every soul the same way, because every soul is not walking the same path. Some need our gentleness. Others need our silence. Still others need our refusal. But all need our honesty. There is a persistent myth that boundaries are inherently unkind, that saying no, walking away, or confronting someone's behavior is an act of cruelty. This belief has wormed its way into modern thinking and convinced many that love must always be soft, that kindness requires endless availability, and that refusal is a form of rejection. But this view is not only wrong, it is destructive. Boundaries are not the opposite of compassion. They are its guardian. They protect what is good, preserve what is true, and give love a structure in which it can breathe without suffocating. To set a boundary is to recognize that your time, energy, and emotional space are not infinite. It is an admission of limitation, and limitation is not weakness, it is wisdom. Even the strongest structures have walls, and the most fruitful gardens have fences, not to keep everything out, but to keep the wrong things out. Without boundaries, relationships become distorted. One person gives endlessly while the other takes without thought. One becomes exhausted, the other entitled. Resentment replaces trust, and what began as kindness becomes a quiet form of self-betrayal. People often confuse being available with being good. But goodness is not measured by how much of yourself you allow to be consumed. A person who is constantly accessible, constantly agreeable, constantly yielding is not necessarily good. They may simply be afraid of conflict, of disappointing others, of being seen as cold. But fear, when dressed as virtue, leads to ruin. It creates patterns where unhealthy behavior is tolerated under the banner of kindness. It creates relationships where dysfunction is normalized, as long as everyone remains polite. A boundary says, I will not allow this behavior to continue. It says, I love you, but I will not enable you. It says, you are still responsible for your choices. These are not cruel messages. They are messages of clarity. They respect both the giver and the receiver. The person who sets a boundary does not do so out of selfishness, but out of a commitment to truth. They recognize that love without limits becomes manipulation, and that compassion without caution. When you set a boundary, you are not saying that someone is worthless. You are saying that your well-being matters too. You are saying that peace cannot be purchased at the cost of your dignity. Often, those who are most wounded by the world are also the most generous. They give until there is nothing left. But true generosity requires discernment. It knows when to say yes and when to say no. It knows that some people take not because they need, but because they are used to taking. In a world that praises being nice, the act of setting a boundary can feel like rebellion. It can feel unnatural, even wrong. But niceness and goodness are not the same. Niceness avoids discomfort. Goodness endures it when necessary. Niceness keeps the peace at all costs. Goodness wages peace, but not at the expense of what is right. If love is to be real, it must sometimes be firm. If kindness is to mean anything, it must be paired with self-respect. There are moments when the most loving thing you can do is walk away, not in anger, but in resolve. There are moments when silence is more truthful than words. There are moments when withdrawal is not punishment, but protection. Boundaries do not end relationships. They define the terms by which relationships can thrive. They are not weapons. They are gates. And like all gates, they serve both to open and to close. Not out of malice, but out of care for what lies within. Flattery is not love, though it often wears its disguise convincingly. It mimics affection, speaks sweetly, and appears to affirm, but it lacks the substance that love demands. True love is anchored in truth. It seeks the good of the other, not merely their approval. Flattery, by contrast, seeks something in return: praise, safety, admiration, or influence. It tells people what they want to hear, even if what they want to hear is a lie. And while it may seem harmless or even kind, flattery is a form of manipulation that places personal comfort above the well-being of another soul. There is a deep difference between encouragement and flattery. Encouragement lifts and inspires because it is based on what is real. It recognizes effort, progress, and potential, and calls forth more of it. Flattery avoids all discomfort. It tells a person that they are already perfect, already wise, already right, no matter what they are doing or saying. It trades honesty for approval. It whispers affirmations, not because they are true, but because they are convenient. In this way, flattery is not generous, it is selfish. It does not serve the other person. It protects the flatterer from conflict, rejection, or discomfort. This is particularly dangerous in relationships that require honesty to thrive. In friendship, flattery creates illusions. One friend pretends the other is faultless, and in return they are rewarded with continued closeness. But there is no growth in such an arrangement. Mistakes are ignored, destructive patterns go unchecked, and what passes for intimacy is only surface-level agreement. In romantic love, flattery may feel intoxicating at first, but it quickly decays into insecurity. A love that cannot challenge, that cannot say this isn't right, is not strong. It is fragile. It may be full of compliments, but empty of commitment. The flattery that poses as kindness can even be found in public spaces. In conversations where difficult truths need to be spoken, people may withhold them to appear kind or inclusive. They may nod in agreement when they should question, offer support when they should resist. This behavior is not loving, it is enabling. To flatter a lie is to help it grow. To flatter wrongdoing is to allow it to spread. And in the end, the cost of all that appeasement is truth itself. Sometimes the fear that drives flattery is subtle. A person does not want to hurt another's feelings. They do not want to create tension. They do not want to be seen as judgmental. And so they say what is easy, what is pleasant, what maintains peace. But peace maintained through dishonesty is not peace at all. It is delay. It is a temporary comfort that leaves deeper wounds unaddressed. Love is not afraid of those wounds. It sees them and speaks to them, even when the words sting. Flattery creates a world where no one is challenged, no one is held accountable, and no one is truly known. Love, on the other hand, dares to enter that uncomfortable space where truth and affection meet. It knows that a person's dignity is not affirmed by false praise, but by honest engagement. Love says, I care enough about you to tell you the truth. Love does not flatter, it frees. To love someone is not to approve of everything they do. It is to see them clearly and still choose to walk beside them. It is to speak with care, but also with courage. It is to refuse the easy path of empty praise and to walk instead the harder road of meaningful honesty. Flattery may win smiles, but love wins souls. And while the flatterer seeks to be liked, the one who truly loves seeks the good, no matter the cost. Truth is not always gentle. It does not always arrive with soft words or a pleasant tone. Often it crashes through the door like a storm, unsettling everything it touches. And yet, despite its harshness, truth is the only thing that truly heals. It may wound at first, but its purpose is not to destroy. It is to expose what is false, weak, or broken, so that it can be made strong and whole again. The discomfort it causes is not a sign of its cruelty, but of its power. There are no deep transformations without it, and no lasting peace that ignores it. People often fear telling the truth because of the pain it may cause. They imagine that to speak honestly, especially when that honesty is unpleasant, is to harm. And in the name of avoiding that harm, they remain silent. They tell half-truths, soften realities, or withhold their thoughts entirely. But silence is not always kindness. In many cases, it is a refusal to love someone enough to help them face what they must. A lie may be more comforting in the moment, but it leaves people blind. Truth, though it stings, gives sight. Think of a physician with a patient who has a serious illness. The diagnosis is not what the patient wants to hear. It will change everything, perhaps require painful treatment, even surgery. Should the doctor lie to protect the patient's feelings? Should they say nothing, allowing the disease to grow unchecked, or because the truth would cause distress? Of course not. We know instinctively that such silence would be betrayal. And yet, in our personal relationships, we often do the very same thing. We conceal truth in the name of compassion, when in reality, it is fear masquerading as care. Truth confronts. It names what others avoid. It does not flatter or reassure when something is wrong, and for this reason, it is often unwelcome. People recoil from it, resist it, even attack those who speak it. But the initial pain it causes is a necessary part of growth. It is the breaking down before the building up. When someone hears a hard truth about themselves, their choices, or their path, it may cause anger or grief. But if received with humility, that truth can become the seed of transformation. There is a kind of love that dares to tell these truths, not out of superiority or bitterness, but out of genuine care for the soul of another. This kind of love doesn't enjoy the confrontation, but it chooses it anyway. It knows that comfort is not the same as healing. It understands that growth often comes through pressure, and that sparing someone the pain of truth is not mercy, it's neglect. Sometimes the truth we must tell is about our own limits, saying, "I can't continue this relationship as it is," or "I'm hurt by how you treat me," may bring discomfort to both people involved. But without those words, the problem remains hidden and nothing changes. Other times, the truth is about someone else's actions or mindset. To say, "This isn't right," or "You need to reconsider," is not an act of aggression. It is a gift, difficult to receive, but priceless when understood. We must remember that real healing does not come from being endlessly agreeable or from hiding what matters. It comes from facing what is broken, naming it, and choosing to do something about it. That process begins with truth, and though it may cause pain, it also opens the door to freedom. For there is no true love without truth, and no real kindness that does not sometimes risk being misunderstood. There is a false comfort in always being liked. It creates the illusion of peace, of harmony, of approval. Many chase it relentlessly, shaping their words, their actions, and even their beliefs to avoid disapproval. But this pursuit comes at a high cost. When being liked becomes more important than being honest, we trade our integrity for acceptance. We begin to measure our worth not by what is true, but by how agreeable we appear. In the process, something essential is lost: our moral spine, our courage, and often our very self. The fear of being disliked is powerful. It whispers that confrontation is cruelty, that honesty is harsh, and that standing firm will leave you alone. It tells you to nod, to smile, to say what others want to hear. It teaches you to be agreeable at all costs. And slowly, it turns you into a version of yourself that is more performance than person. You become someone who avoids friction, who pleases everyone and challenges no one, who offers approval in every direction even when something inside you recoils from what you're affirming. This isn't kindness, it's self-erasure. Truth, by its very nature, draws lines. It makes distinctions, It names what is right and wrong, just and unjust, wise and foolish, and people do not always respond kindly to those lines. When you speak the truth, especially a hard truth, you risk rejection. You risk being seen as judgmental, difficult, or cold. But the alternative is to remain silent in the face of falsehood, to offer your approval where it isn't deserved, and to make peace with lies. That may win you smiles, but it will not give you peace. It will not give you strength, and it certainly will not give you respect. Not the kind that matters. There are moments in every life when a choice must be made, to be liked or to be honest, to keep the peace or to speak the truth, to go along with what is easy or to stand for what is right. Those who choose truth will sometimes find themselves on the outside. They may be labeled as unkind, even when they are acting out of deep love, but they will sleep with clear consciences, and they will walk with heads held high, not out of pride, but out of quiet, steady conviction. It is worth noting that being disliked does not mean you have failed. In fact, it may be one of the clearest signs that you are doing something right. The prophets, the reformers, the thinkers who shaped history, many of them were hated in their time, not because they were cruel or reckless, but because they told the truth when no one wanted to hear it. They did not bend to be liked, they stood firm so that others might see, and in time some did. The kind of love that transforms people is not the love that flatters, that avoids tension, that fears disagreement. It is the love that dares to challenge, to correct, to speak up. Not with malice, but with conviction. Not to wound, but to awaken. And that kind of love will not always be met with applause. Sometimes it will be met with silence, with anger, or with distance. But it is still the right thing. It is still the loving thing. Seeking to be liked by everyone is a trap. It makes you small, quiet, compliant. It keeps you from asking hard questions, from making necessary changes, from drawing the lines that protect what is good. True integrity is not concerned with how wide the applause is, but how deep the truth goes. You may lose approval, but you will keep your soul. And that, in the end, is the only kind of approval worth having. So then, let us stop being kind to everyone. Not because kindness is wrong, but because indiscriminate kindness is not truly kind at all. Kindness, when stripped of truth, boundaries, and courage, becomes a hollow performance, a polite mask that hides fear and compromise. The world does not need more agreeable faces. It needs honest souls. People do not grow by being flattered. They grow by being challenged, held accountable, and loved in ways that are sometimes painful, but always real. To love well is not to be liked by all. It is to stand firm, to speak truth, to guard what is good, and to offer kindness where it has weight, not where it is wasted. Let our words be few, our love be fierce, and our kindness be wise enough to know when it must say, enough.